Hello everyone, welcome to Red Best channel. In this video, we'll look at the recent press release by ICE, DHS that was actually focused on cracking down of the F1 OPT program fraud that has been happening. We'll cover what are the facts of the program and how they've uncovered and what it means for students and what does it mean for the new upcoming new regulation that's currently in progress. So that's what we'll cover in this video. So this is what we'll cover. Look at the highlights and all of that, and rest of the things. If you want to subscribe to our channel, do subscribe for getting regular updates. So ICE held a major, basically Immigration Customs Enforcement held a major press conference on May 12th on the OPT fraud, and in fact, there is a whole video on that, and we'll summarize what they really covered and how the whole thing worked, so that it's clear on what's happening. So the key facts from the press conference are basically that. It's a year-long Homeland Security investigations probe that exposed this, and there were 10,000 cases found that were from the top 25 OPT employers. OPT employers, and there is more enforcement actions that are forthcoming. And this was run about in 8 states: Texas, Georgia, Illinois, New York, or New Jersey, and some of these things, right? And there were 18 site visits in North Texas alone in a single week to expose all of these things, right? So this is what is a key crux of whatever it is, and we'll look at how the whole thing worked and all of that in the next thing. So for you to get a sense of the program, OPT, right? If you're an F1 student, after you graduate, you get something called an OPT, optional practical training, where you get a chance to work with a US employer so that you get the experience after your education. So that's the fundamental idea behind the OPT program. And there's also something called STEM OPT. If you're a part of STEM degree, you also can get additional 24 months of STEM OPT. So that's the whole thing. It was originally 17 months, 12 and 17 months, extra 24 months. So that's how it's structured, right? So overall, if you see in the last 10 years or so, you see the numbers have been significantly going up. In the last couple of years, it's much more higher. So what you see on the screen is basically open doors data that is basically tells the entire OPT and STEM OPT students that are in the US. So basically, all of these are adding to the whole thing, right? Because if you see the number of OPT students are because employers can hire OPT students for significantly lesser amount of salary, depending because they're still an F1 student. So this kind of used in a way that is not really intended. That's the idea. So all in all, I mean, what you see on the screen is the data that is coming up, and recent surge in the OPT numbers. So that's the reason for this, right? Now, just what has happened, the headline number is 10,000 is 10,000 students were found to be violent, right? And they said 10,000 suspicious OPT cases were identified. And to put things in perspective, this is just 3%, 3.3% of the overall OPT numbers, right? So because if you see there are out of 294,000, and that's literally like 3%, 3.3%. Not a lot percentage, but the numbers are significantly higher. The kind of fraud that's happening, and only the top 25 employers, right? And some of the things, basically, when the site visits happened, right, they found empty buildings. So you've been seeing in the news where H1B program has been like people policing these things, knocking on doors and LCAs and all of that in Texas and some things around that. So of course, these are site visits done by DHS and ICE, right, where they found empty buildings with locked doors, residential addresses, and they say that one employer claimed up only 3 students, but DHS records and surveys showed 500 plus and they listed the same address. Another one claimed 150 plus students, but couldn't answer who they were. So if you see, and many of the 50% of India, like, this is another one also, right, how the numbers grew. So essentially, the whole things are pointing out that, okay, what's this one? There are 5% students at one site, right? So all of these numbers are actually like really, really staggering numbers, and frightening if you ask me, right? The kind of fraud that's happening, right? So because I guess because there are some restrictions, you can't have 90 days of unemployment. So there's definitely in the past some of these things were exposed, but right now I think DHS is cracking down some of these things, right? So some of the red flags that they identified were empty buildings, no employees, and all of these things, right? And shared addresses, and residential addresses, and basically tax tax related fraud, suspicion international cash flows, and trained by overseas managers. Essentially, the whole program intention was to get trained from US employer, but now they've been trained managers. So basically, they couldn't name the student. So because they've been issuing these letters, so again, there is definitely fraud. But again, the scale of this is what is actually causing all of this, right? And these are some quotes, right? I mean, is exactly what they said. OPT has become a kind of fraud. The fraud is not. I mean, you can read all of these, right? OPT has ballooned into uncontrollable guest worker pipeline for hundreds of foreign students working in the U.S. DHS will investigate. So these are all basically essentially like. What they've actually said in that, right, based on that as well, right. Now how the whole thing worked was basically, right, a company would set up a FE staffing company. They would set up a shell company, and then with a PO box, residential address, or an empty office, and they do post a fake job basically, right. They post a fake service job, and then people list in this address as service address, right, and then the reality is they're not really working there. They're actually trained by other teams in India and other countries as well. Wherever, right, it is, right. It doesn't matter. The idea is it's basically a fraud scheme that's been that's what they explained. So the biggest reason the fraud has happened there because when you somebody is employed on OPT, there is no employer side petition to USCIS. Students apply and just updated on the service records. So some of them are not really vetted. Basically, whatever is declared, right? So there is no formal sponsor, LCA, no government check. All of these, it becomes a really a soft target, right? That's the idea, right? And again, it's been also claimed that students paid fees to these shell employees under the table, and someone never worked. And I mean, this happened a few years ago. It's not like the first time that's happening. But all of these are, again, Trump administration is trying to crack down on this fraud as well, right? So, I mean, the whole idea of this is that this video is to educate. If you're an F1 student, do not try to do any of these kinds of things, right? Don't accept offers from companies that have no real office, no website, just a residential address. Don't try to take shortcuts, right? Service address, working with India team or working with self-employment is a plan, ignoring the training plan. So these are some of the red flags that you should really, really avoid, because some of these, if you really get into this because you're desperate, you get really get into big trouble. Your visa could be revoked, you could be deported, you could face a 5 to 10 year ban. And this does not stop. If this gets uncovered in the future, also your green card gets denied. So there is a lot of complications. Do not try to game the system. That's going to get you in trouble. I mean, that's the whole idea of this. And again, the whole reason of probably this press release is coming up because, as there is a duration of status rule that was sent to OMB last week. As we covered in our weekly thing, and they want to cap this to 4 years. So all of this, I guess probably they're setting the precedents for that rule to come in, so that there is more support for that. Maybe again, that's something that we are waiting for, right? That we kind of covered in our last weekly summary. So that's what it is. And all of these also, they eliminate OPT in the H1B Abuse Act. So there is always definitely a lot of criticism on this by the program, and there are some rules that are currently in progress. That are really cracking down this OPT. So we'll have to see the future of what's going to be with this. But all of these are actually ensuring that that's what's in store for that, right? So in summary, the key takeaway is ICE did spend about 1 year, investigating all of these. They had a major press conference on May 12th, and they uncovered 10,000 plus OPT fraud cases. So we don't know what they will do with all these cases, right? But the idea is they figured out this much amount of fraud, and they're just saying that they're going to do more enforcement on this. They're doing site visits, and they figured out the empty buildings and all of these things. And many of these, again, this was already, some of these were discovered in the past, but again, they're trying to do on a large scale because Trump administration is trying to crack down on fraud. That's the whole point of having these new regulations and all of these things that are coming up with. So if you're a student, avoid all these, shortcuts. Working with a shell company, all of these pay-to-pay jobs, or having even if you're a real company and somebody's training from abroad, don't take that. And verify when you join a company if it's real and everything matches, so that it protects you, right? So all in all, again, this is kind of they're setting this as a pretext for what the D slash duration of status F1. That's what I'm assuming. So we'll see what is in store in the next. So again, thank you for watching. Do subscribe for getting regular updates.